Danielle Gani from Commercial UAV News, and today I will be following up with Michael Healander, President and CEO of Airspace Link Incorporated, about some of the topics that came up during our May 13th webinar. Is the world ready for drone delivery? Welcome back, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
So, something we weren't able to talk about during the drone delivery webinar, but is arguably one of the most important elements to this puzzle, is public acceptance and buy-in. Based on the types of regulations being developed in response to drones, especially on the state and local level, are you seeing the public open up to drone delivery?
Yes and no. I think we have a mixed response right now. And part of that is, when we talk to elected officials, governors, mayors, city council, they just aren't educated enough to understand or answer a lot of these questions. Are we ready for drone? They don't know. That's a reaction that they get. And part of that reaction is, the infrastructure and mobility that happens within communities goes through a process. They go through transportation planning. There's an economic impact. What's the impact of having this? They just don't know. And what is the safety? And what is privacy? How do we handle privacy? What are the rules and regulations? There's just so many questions when talking to the elected officials that ultimately are elected by citizens and the people that might want package delivery, but don't know how to go about it. So public acceptance is on the fence right now, and there's ways to help create that demand. But right now we need to get them educated on what's the benefits of it within each industry, within a community.
Fantastic. And you kind of hit on some of the questions that I hope to go over. What are some of the ways that drones can be perceived as a problem for locals, especially when they start going to their government and asking them about what is this drone delivery? And so how can and do laws, regulations, and businesses address some of those concerns effectively when they're asked about them?
Yeah. I think the reaction right now, the first reaction is privacy. That's because they're asked that by their citizens. I got a call this weekend, said, hey, there's a drone in the city in Michigan. It keeps flying over a resident's pool with their kids in it every day. What can we do? And there's just not a clear process of understanding what they're supposed to do. And that creates a lot of reactions to create rules, or actually ordinances, that are hard to enforce anyways, but it's their first reaction to it. So just not understanding. And if we can get them motivated about how drones can bring good, drones for good, what's the economic impact of having drone delivery within a medical area, or within agriculture, or within retail, how does that benefit our community? Then you tend to overlook some of those things because the benefits outweigh the negatives there. So there is a problem right now because there's no process, and it's really hard to implement something without a process. And there are processes out there that we're looking to help create within communities to then get them comfortable to bring it within their communities.
So you bring up a really important point. This is really more than just getting acceptance. It's really about building a business case so that you can generate demand for these services. How do we flip that switch from wanting to shoot drones out of the sky to generating that kind of demand and support for them? What are some ways that you've been able to discuss that with your clients?
Yes, so it's less about just saying, hey, let us fly wherever. It's about doing a impact assessment for safety and privacy. Second, do an economic impact, just like transportation planning. Let the transportation planners get involved as well. As how does that fit within our community? How do the logistics work? Where do they fly? How high? Just providing that information and how it would be implemented within a community goes a long ways. And then they have systems in place today. GIS manages most asset and infrastructure within communities, and providing a tool to communicate out to the drone industry that, you know what, we want package delivery. Well, how do you know that we don't have a parade going on, or a concert, or a farmer's market with a lot of exposed people that goes against the FAA flights over people rule, and what's the density and probability of hitting someone? So by providing a set of tools that's they already use today, and then take the drone rules and regulations and push that through that, and then publish that out to the drone industry for package delivery. That makes them comfortable to say, hey, we're a smart, connected community, smart city. We want you to build your factories or provide drone delivery services within our community because it follows the tools and the processes that we're used to using today. And I think that's really important. If we can do that and show the value, they become the biggest promoters for the communities, because now you're not listening necessarily to every individual citizen. It's an elected official that says we're a smart community, and we want to provide the service to to our residents and to our businesses.
It becomes something you can promote, kind of something that that can make your town proud, versus just having a couple handful of people demanding that service.
You got it. Yep.
Awesome. So, as a follow-up question, is there anything that we can be doing as an industry to address public acceptance?
Um, yes. So we have to speak in the language, and I'll keep saying this, elected officials, because if you get a city pulling for, or a county or a state, it goes a long ways, and you'll hear examples of that with like North Dakota, where the state is pulling the entire community and residents along to create beyond visual line of sight and package delivery within the communities. But we are in this interesting situation of I call it the three-legged stool. You have communities that are only educated so far and being told that they have no say, and they don't know what the economic impact is to having drones in their communities. So they create ordinances and push back on it. Then you have the FAA that's um, it's all about safety, and how do you create your safety case, and what is the hazards and the risk mitigation plans, and do you have the buy-in of the communities? So they want, it's all about safety. And then you have the drone community, your recreational pilots and your Part 107 pilots that are just like, hey, the less rules the better, just let us fly wherever we want. And then you have drone delivery that, hey, we need a little bit of buy-in from everyone because we want community FAA to trust our where we're going to fly and the data that we're using to create the hazard data, and then other drone operators understanding where we're flying. So if I think what's going to happen is we're finding the middle ground between all of these different groups. Not everyone's going to be 100% happy, but it's going to allow us to scale as an industry for package delivery and other use cases as well.
And it's something that you mentioned during in your last question, and you also mentioned it during your webinar, is the particular case of North Dakota and how they've taken a leadership role in developing beyond visual line of sight infrastructure and managing up to the FAA. Can you talk a little bit more about what managing up looks like for a state and some of the key elements that go into building a BVLOS infrastructure?
Yes. So North Dakota went through the process of creating a beyond visual line of sight and was able to get a waiver, and took the information and the learning from that and said, all right, how do we do that for the entire state? We can wait for the FAA to help provide more tools and how that process will go. But managing up in the sense of, they said, tell you what, we're just going to create a budget and we'll just drive and build this infrastructure based on what we know, but support the FAA. So creating a budget that supports the FAA versus waiting for the FAA to maybe push budget down to support the drone industry. They're saying, hey, we want to be progressive. We want to provide this infrastructure to our energy companies. We want to provide this infrastructure to agriculture, to our public safety, and so on and so forth. So managing up means putting in an infrastructure that supports what the FAA is trying to do, and investing with them to push ahead. So they've been very progressive. It's a 2-year deployment. It includes radar and infrastructure and communications and all of the things that are required to fly manned aircraft, but start to integrate them with the low altitude infrastructure. And then this will be a service that will provide just like you would drive on roads. There will be a process to check your airworthiness and ground-based risk and communications, and if everything signs off, hopefully those safety cases are to a point where it's super quick versus waiting 6 months, and you can get those authorizations.
Fantastic. Definitely a state to watch in the future.
Yeah.
Those are all the questions I wanted to follow up with you today. Thank you so much for reconnecting, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.